fact that Adam David mentioned that Manchester United could have gone for Jorginho as well probably highlights that this is a very canny signing by Arsenal.
They certainly think so, Mark, and I've started to get my head around it, to be fair. I think there was an initial skepticism on the basis of his age, which is a bit of a throwback to Arsenal signing others from Chelsea, like Willian and David Luiz, in a time where they were not looking so good, and those deals did not do very well. There was also the positional issue in that Arsenal were aiming to sign a six. It's what they needed in the absence of Mohamed El Neni through a knee injury that's now been confirmed as long-term because he's undergone surgery. Constant doubts over Thomas Partey's durability, although he seems to be holding up okay at the moment. About Granit Xhaka's availability with his penchant for the referee's notebook. And that's why they looked at Moises Caicedo and tried to bring him in. That's why they have such admiration for Declan Rice and may try to bring him in, and explored a number of other options, I'm sure, for that holding midfield role. And then they bring in Jorginho. However, there is a wider perspective to this. What is available when you've only got 24-ish hours to go? Who do you like? Well, Arsenal like Jorginho because Mikel Arteta was part of the Manchester City hierarchy that tried to sign him from, was it Napoli? He ended up going to Chelsea. Arsenal tried to sign him a few years ago before Marina Granovskaya put a block on it. So there's clear admiration there from Mikel Arteta. We've seen him embracing Jorginho as he has left the pitch in games that Arteta has taken charge of for Arsenal against Chelsea. We know he's a high-level player, a proven international with Italy, won the Euros against England at Wembley, and multiple elite trophies at club level. He, when the news started to filter through to the Arsenal playing squad and staff, it generated a really positive response because players know and staff within the industry know good quality players and professionals. The view was he's got a fantastic technical level, tactical understanding and interpretation for what Mikel Arteta will want him to do and how he can fit into Arsenal's method, vast experience. And as Jonathan Northcroft of the Sunday Times put it, you could argue he's exactly what this young and relatively inexperienced Arsenal squad need to help guide them through a Premier League title push. They are firmly in control of this race. And if they were to pull it off and go the distance, then you suspect somebody like him could come in very handy.
And actually, Adam, that's the final point. The fact that they are in a title race. You sense if they were sixth or fifth, they might not have done this and kind of muddled through. And I mean, they might not. They might have wanted him to push for top four, but where they are kind of feels like this is the kind of, it's 12 million quid roughly. David gave us the numbers on yesterday's podcast. They're going for the title. It makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, if you'd have said, I know it's not what Arsenal probably set out to do at the start of the window in terms of, exactly. Everyone's talking about Mudryk and maybe, one of Rice or Caicedo at some point.
João
Felix. So there's all this kind of excitement around it. But actually, when you come away from it, you've taken probably Brighton's best attacking player, and Brighton have been, one of the better teams in the league over the last 12 months or so, and also a player who has experience of winning things, which this Arsenal team, as talented as it is, isn't full of players that have experience of winning things. And when I think of title races, I think, and particularly when I think of Arsenal late in seasons, where there has been this trend, I'm not saying it will happen again, where things sort of get away from them and they struggle for control and there's a loss of composure. Well, when I think of Jorginho, he's kind of the opposite of that. He is a player that exudes control and composure and calmness. So what I am interested in is where exactly he will be. Is he just going to be on the bench and coming on for the last half hour of games to keep the ball and help see games out. I don't think that's the worst role for him, to be honest. But equally, I don't think he will see himself as someone who's come to sit on the bench. And then you start to think, well, but you have that brilliant midfield of Partey and Xhaka and Odegaard that is kind of set. So I am interested to see how he's used in the next few months, particularly if Arsenal go out of the Europa League and there's not that many games.
And I just want to add one point around this. And of course, there will be people that aren't massively fond of the Jorginho signing, maybe even the Trossard one as well. And those are legitimate points. They are not the players that Arsenal initially set out to get. But equally, there were some concerns, significant concerns about the level of expenditure Arsenal were prepared to go to for Mykhailo Mudryk, who they saw as a long-term signing, not necessarily for an immediate impact here and now in the final 4 months of the season. And that's why they were looking at João Felix to add on a short-term loan deal. But then there were complaints about the level of expenditure Arsenal were going to have to do, that Chelsea have committed to bring João Felix in, who got sent off on his first appearance. So these situations are not black and white. Furthermore, Jorginho already lives in London. He's ready to play Premier League football immediately with no period of adaptation other than to Arsenal's style and his new teammates. And finally, but very importantly, it's a 1.5-year contract with the option to extend by 12 months. That means that Arsenal can still go out and sign their big midfielder in a few months' time in the summer. It's relatively short term. And you could argue, with reflection, away from the drama and hysteria of the window and the transfer market and this arms race and the frenzy and sort of salivation that the public have for new signings, the most expensive one, the biggest names from Football Manager and FIFA and the football that they watch, that actually it's a pretty good window for Arsenal. Do they come out in better shape than they went into it? And we haven't even mentioned Jakub Kiwior, who was a starting player at left centre-back for Poland at the World Cup. Yes, they do.
You mentioned in your answer, David, before we heard from Mark, that this will also allow them to still do what they want to do in the summer.
Definitely. And we've seen reports linking Arsenal with a move for Declan Rice. He is claimed to be their priority target, and that maybe they're the front runners at this point in time.
Are they the front runners partly? I mean, are they the front runners? Are they the front runners partly because they could win the title, so he'd be going to the title winners, and also partly because of what happened on deadline day with Arsenal signing Jorginho and Chelsea breaking the British transfer record to sign a player who plays in Declan Rice's position?
Well, I'm referring to reports rather than my own information. I just need to make that clear. And those reports came before deadline day. And so that points to the fact that Arsenal have probably done quite a lot of work on this already. But it also points to the market. Will Chelsea go through, even before it was confirmed Enzo Fernandez was coming, with a move for Declan Rice? Do they want him back at Stamford Bridge, given he was released in his formative years? Will he want to go back to Stamford Bridge? Will the finances be right to make it happen in any circumstance, let alone after Enzo Fernandez and all the other spending Chelsea have committed to? What will they do on contract renewals for the likes of N'Golo Kante and Mateo Kovacic? Who else might they look to bring in from their the different balls that they're juggling that we've mentioned before? Which include the likes of Romeo Lavia, Moises Caicedo, Alexis McAllister, and there will be names that are escaping me in addition to those. Arsenal seemingly have a clear need. They have been showing their financial muscle in the market to an extent that would suggest a move for Declan Rice with 2 years left on his contract at West Ham, and with the expectation that this is going to be the summer where the West Ham hierarchy are prepared to trade him. Seems to fit quite nicely.
David, do you think, sorry to cut across you, do you think Declan Rice's valuation, I mean, notwithstanding the fact he'll have 2 years left on his contract, also he's probably not had the best of seasons relative to sort of the last couple of years, just because the team in general hasn't been as good, didn't make a huge impression at the World Cup, but also when you think this summer, you're probably going to have Jude Bellingham on the market, Moises Caicedo on the market, as you say, McAllister. I'm not saying they're all kind of identical players, but does his valuation become a little bit cheaper compared to, say, last summer or the summer before that?
I'm not sure if it's because of those competitors for slots at the biggest clubs, because that wouldn't really bother West Ham. I think it's more the contractual situation. It's their last chance to reap a massive transfer fee for him. But I think compared to last year, when West Ham had no intention or need to sell, and the valuation, if there was one, was said to be in excess of £100 million, the word that I'm hearing from around the industry is that 75, 80, 85, a more realistic figure for Declan Rice this coming summer than has been the case
even
before.
After what Chelsea have gone and done with Enzo Fernandez. Because if I'm West Ham,
I think so.
I'm looking at that and saying he's probably 150 million.
Yeah. Ultimately, West Ham can do whatever they want on this, but the reality is that they'll probably need to trade him financially, given they don't benefit from, say, Champions League football. We don't know how this season will finish for them. You know, they are in threat of relegation. They'll like to think that they'll pull away from it. And so there are multiple undecided factors. You know, if in the worst case scenario for them that they were to go down, then the value will drop much further. So they have to be realistic about this. And I'm sure, I'd like to think they've had some grown-up conversations with his representatives. And of course, we then need to keep an eye on other clubs like Manchester United, who have often been linked with Declan Rice, but also who will be the ownership at the time. And are they still in the market to bolster their midfield in a way that we have been led to believe in recent years, because they've been short of top midfield options until the arrival of Casemiro. And of course, Paul Pogba departed. And then Manchester City. I don't sense that they are strong on Declan Rice. But if Ilkay Gundogan leaves, then clearly there is a need. And then we start to talk about the domino effect that you've touched upon with Jude Bellingham. Where does he go? Liverpool. And it's just the sense you get, which can of course change, that maybe it's an Arsenal-Chelsea toss-up for Declan Rice as things stand. But Mark, back to your original point, the Jorginho deal very much means that a high-profile, high-level number 6 is going to be on the agenda for Arsenal as things stand. And who knows what avenue they decide to take, whether it be Rice, maybe they go back in for Caicedo, or if others emerge. And if anything, in recent times, we've seen that others do emerge, because this time last year, we wouldn't have been talking about Enzo Fernandez.